Okay.
This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And this is December the 6th, 2021. Getting ready for, well, there's no Christmas activity going on here right now because my cat will not decorate and I'm too busy. But I have a wonderful guest on today. He is the producer of films such as The Sting, Taxi Driver, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and other films like The Flamingo Kid, Heart Beeps, and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. And I've interviewed people from a variety of these films, but I'm honored to have the producer, Michael Phillips. How do you do, Michael?
Oh, good. Thank you for your kind words. I'm fine. We're warm here, warmer
You're
than you
four,
are.
you're 4 hours behind me. See, I always tell people that Atlantic Canada is an hour ahead. Is an hour ahead of
Of New York.
New York. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. We got
Nice.
somebody else entered here too. Do I admit him as well?
Sure. Yes, that's Matt, my colleague. He's
Oh,
been around.
okay.
So, I mean, he doesn't have to be on camera. Just to be listening, just to be
Oh,
watching.
that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
More than happy to have him.
Okay.
All right. You know what? I was reading up on you, get a fresher. Of course, I watched Taxi Driver this morning, and that film's celebrating its 45th anniversary this year. I would have been 4 years old when this film came out, and I got to see it on the movie screen a very short time ago. There was a special screening of it, and so I got to see it theatrically, which was awesome.
Good.
But one thing I wanted to touch on, I think it's remarkable that, of course, you and the late Julia Phillips had a wonderful producing team. You both won the Oscar for The Sting. Talk about the success you two had together and the partnership you had professionally.
Well, we were really lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 70s, there were some fantastically talented kids coming out of film school, and they couldn't get arrested. Nobody would read their scripts or take them seriously. It was as if, they played Little League baseball and wanted a major league tryout. So it was an open opportunity for anybody who hung up a shingle and said, I'm a producer and I can give you a couple of $1,000 option for your script. And this was Tony Bill, our partner, who identified this and said, this is a shame, but we can do something with it. So we were really very lucky to fall in with a whole crop of recent film school graduates. And we had come from New York as carpetbaggers and rented a house at the beach, not knowing if we would be able to stay more than a year. We didn't know where our careers were going. But doing that, it turned out 3 years at the beach, we were, our next door neighbors were actresses Margot Kidder and Jennifer Salt. And
Oh,
we had 3
sisters.
years. Yeah, right. And the link to Taxi Driver is through sisters, actually, which I'll
love
get to later.
sisters. I love
But
sisters.
I'm taking a long circular answer, but it was one 3-year collegial gathering where people would come out to the beach, we'd barbecue, we'd talk, we'd help each other with projects, we'd introduce and mix and match people. And it was really an amazing golden age until people got successful and became competitive and jealous and that. But during the early 70s, there was just a lot of just all rooting for each other. What I was starting to say about Sisters is the director, Brian De Palma, was living with Margot Kidder next door to us. And there was a sort of insanity gripping the country during the Boris Spassky, Bobby Fischer chess championship. And we all dusted off our chess sets and played chess. And Brian and I used to play every day. And he told me one day that there was a journalist who was doing a story on him, who had written a script that he didn't like for himself, but he thought it would appeal to me. And he gave me the script of Taxi Driver. So this is the way things happened then. A lot of it was just the good fortune of your rubbing elbows with other people in the business who were, looking for opportunities. I don't know if it's the same way today, but it really was very, very good. I'm going to try to get this a little better here. It was very fortuitous. So we could we could hang around with all the emerging young talent of the 70s, and it was great.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question or strayed from it, but
you know what? You answered it well.
We were very fortunate because we were able to get into business with David Ward, Paul Schrader, Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Robert De Niro before they had any films made.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great. We were, I say, in the right place at the right time and took a chance. Gambled our grub stick.
Jennifer Salt, of course, just came off of Midnight Cowboy and then lands this lead in Sisters, and Margot Kidder, of course, went from Sisters to Black Christmas, and Superman playing Lois Lane. Always loved Margot Kidder. It's sad she's gone, but always
wonderful.
liked. Yeah,
she was a wonderful woman.
Yeah, and Brian De Palma directed a lot of terrific thrillers like Dress to Kill and Carrie, and of course Sisters, Phantom of the Paradise. I could go on with De Palma, but I watched Taxi Driver this morning. I'm going to dive into that first here because this haircut became an in thing after a while. Watching this morning, I was quite taken by the fact that this is probably the most clean cut as you see Joe Spinell in a movie.
Yes.
He's usually very I don't want to use the word dirty looking, but usually scruffy in movies, like Maniac and whatnot.
He's pretty scruffy here. You wouldn't want to take him home for dinner necessarily.
Yeah, but you see him there in that opening with his glasses on and whatnot, and I'm like, it's Joe Spinell, but it's not Joe Spinell. I love the opening when it shows the credits and the taxi goes through the fog, and you get that mood and you get the atmosphere, and then it goes right into the taxi place where the underground garage. This film has a lot of what you don't see a lot nowadays, and it's got that look that the French Connection had, where the locations help make up a lot of what you see. I often said, if you don't have a big budget for a film, find locations with a personality, and that will add so much to your film visually, And I love the look of Taxi Driver, like the little convenience store you'll go into where the guy's being robbed, and the various places he goes with his taxi, Talk about some of the locations in this film. Is there any that really stand out to you?
Well, New York was at a low point then. This was 1975 when we were shooting, and it was at its worst. And we were shooting on what is now the fashionable Upper West Side, but at that time was row after row of condemned buildings. And we were able to just repurpose abandoned condemned apartment buildings and build sets. Iris's apartment, Travis's apartment, couple of other things. But we had to actually hire a gang to protect us from another gang. It was so dangerous that time at that moment. But just prowling the streets the tackier underbelly of New York. Um, I mean, it was there, and Marty's instinct was to, you know, that these are the textures he wanted in the film, and it was written in the script, and so yeah, I mean, New York was at its worst, and we got it at that time. So
Yeah. No, I even like the location where Sport is, played by Harvey
oh
Keitel, and
yeah.
you know, it Miss 45, a Abel Ferrara movie, captured some of this too with its
Mhm.
location. Yeah. So
Yeah,
so I mean,
we didn't have to dress anything. It was it was real. It was that's what was there. Yeah.
and of course Martin Scorsese's of course came off of Mean Streets, you know,
Mhm.
and he's still successful today, and is in a great body of work. I think After Hours is underrated. Love that
Mhm.
film.
Mhm.
Even Bringing Out the Dead was another underrated Scorsese's film. Love Taxi Driver, celebrating 45 years. That must be quite the thing for you and Martin Scorsese's look back 45 years ago. This fashion was going.
I know. Well, we were able to get together for the 40th anniversary and to reunite and have dinner and kind of marvel at the fact that this film endured, found a place in movie history and endured when it was so unwanted and vilified when it first came out. So we ended up really, it ended up being just a labor of love. Our expectations, I mean, I thought it spoke some kind of truth and it would resonate with some people, um, but its success really was greater than any of us was planning on.
Is he taking you out to dinner for the 45th? Come on now, we're winding down on the year.
I know.
You
Well,
might you might want
it's
to.
hard to start planning. I'd have to start planning now for the 50th because these guys are all over the world all the time.
You tell Martin Scorsese you're hungry. He owes you dinner.
He does. Okay, we'll do.
Oh, the back as these wonderful characters. Robert De Niro, of course. Even South Park has played around. Of course, others have done it as well. The whole thing, you talking to me, you talking to me. I'm the only one here. Remember South Park played around with that. Uh, Chevy Chase did something with that in Cops and Robertson. And it's been done numerous times. Did you guys have any inkling at the time that was going
Now,
to become a
I have to
thing?
tell you that this was a particular delight for me. I generally spend a lot of time on the set,
Mm-hmm.
but that day was a pretty boring day. There was no dialogue. It was just a few pieces of action of De Niro alone in his apartment. And I didn't go to the set. Or was in and out. And I wasn't there during the filming of that. And the next day, I was watching the dailies and I saw this and it was, you could feel that, you know, it was taking over the room. It was so powerful. And I turned to Marty and I said, what happened? You know, how did you come up with this? And he said, Bobby did it. And I said, well, what did you do? You're the director. You must have told him something, give him some direction. I'm waiting to hear a pearl of wisdom. He says, I don't know. I said, well, what were the words you used? I said, do something. The only direction he gave Bobby was do something. And Bobby came up with that. And I feel like we've all done that. You know, we've all played that mirror business. And I'm glad. I felt it was gold. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, no, it was a great moment, and of course Jodie Foster was as Iris, very stunning. Of course, she did Bugsy Malone the same year,
Mhm.
um, and of course we all know a little bit of controversy that happened with her in and around that, but with some idiot, but nonetheless. she was ahead of her time as a young talent, you know. Comes off very, very bright. And of course, she still comes off. She's a very intelligent woman. And you look at her in this or look at her in Silence of the Lambs. You could see why Jodie Foster has won 2 Academy Awards, you know.
Mhm.
Talk about working with her on this film as a budding young talent.
Well, a producer doesn't really work with the actors deliberately. We
Mm-hmm.
try to keep our distance so as to not confuse them.
Mm-hmm.
They listen to the director. But I spent every day sitting next to her mother, and the army of people. At being 11 years old, we had to have a welfare worker from California and a welfare worker from New York and a tutor. I mean, and none of the strong language was uttered while she was on camera, while she was on the set. I mean, if you look carefully, you'll see it's always over Bobby's shoulder when he's saying something. He's using 4-letter words. Um, but she was, she was great. Bobby, he groomed her for the role. He spent a lot of time with her, and but she was an 11-year-old kid, so
Oh,
I didn't
she's
have her
great.
much of a relationship. Yeah,
She's great. I even like it when they're in the diner and she's got these green rimmed
yeah,
glasses on, um,
yeah,
putting jam on her toast. No, I loved her in this. Sybil Shepherd was also great. I love this. Of course, this isn't black and white, but this was red and white outfit she had on there. Um,
uh-huh,
Sybil Shepherd looked
yeah,
ravishing in this movie, and of
yeah,
course Harvey Keitel was, of course, Sport. You had a great cast in this
yeah.
movie, you know. Um, did you guys have any inkling of the legacy this film would have in terms of its message? Because there is, as you mentioned earlier, there is a lot of truth going on behind the scenes with this movie.
I thought it was the real deal, and I couldn't predict what impact it would have, but I just knew that there was something really original and strong in this, and I hoped, crossed my fingers. I mean, I remember the day it opened. We had a theater on the Upper East Side of New York. I forgot the name of the theater, and people were lined up around the block hours before, with zero promotion for the. I mean, the studio was not at all confident. They didn't want to spend much money, but I wanted to kiss every one of them. They were Scorsese fans, or they just smelled something going on here. So
Yeah, I even love the scenes like in the deli where you got De Niro and the other taxi drivers, like
a lot of that was not in the original script. That was stuff Marty worked out with the actors. Um, it feels different
I
from
love those scenes.
the
I
rest of
love
it.
it.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a nice thing, bringing Schrader, who is pretty austere, and his, it's very story driven, and the characters are not very verbal. And Marty, who's kind of the opposite, is all over the place. He's Italian. He wants the textures, and it turned out to be a very, very nice thing. The two of them think 1 and 1 equaled 3 here.
And of course, he cameos in it too, sitting in the back seat. It's his wife up in the window, and
That was a last minute problem. We had an actor, George Memley, cast in the role, and he had an accident the day before on another movie,
uh-huh.
and we had no actor, and Marty stepped up and did the role.
Oh, he was great. He was great.
Yeah,
It took me. I didn't catch that on my first viewing of Taxi Driver back when I first saw it, and it's like now it's like, is he doing his Alfred Hitchcock here?
well, you weren't sharp enough to spot my cameo,
I
which
knew you were in it. I was actually looking for it
no,
today.
barely. Well, I'm in the scene in Columbus Circle where Travis goes up to the Secret Service guys and talks about a
Okay.
suspicious-looking character.
Uh-huh.
And then if you're sharp, you notice me a couple of times. So there I
I
am.
remember that scene because yeah, De Niro basically made himself look suspicious.
That's a wonderful scene. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, I remember. Yeah. I missed you, but you know what? I remember reading you were in this film somewhere, and I was like, that was one of the reasons I gave us a refresher today. But I did get lost in the film and
You
really
blinked.
enjoyed it. Huh?
You blinked.
I
Your
must have
fault. You blinked.
blinked.
Yeah.
I must have blinked. The photographer too must have blinked because he did not get that shot of De Niro. He got lost in the crowd and got out of there.
Yeah.
I get I
Michael
gotta say,
Chapman, just to salute him, the late Michael Chapman. He
hmm
was brilliant in terms of creating that look of the images reflected, floating around inside the cab with those images, the surreality of it. He was really onto it. He nailed it.
and I love the climax of the film too, which I won't give away here, but what a great way to go out on the film, you know. Fantastic. And that panning shot that's way, way up there that catches
Mhm.
everything, you know, that was great.
Yep.
Yeah. And we gotta mention Bernard Herrmann, of course, famous for doing a lot of the Hitchcock movies like Psycho, you know. This was, I believe, his last film that he scored.
He died the night after he recorded.
Oh,
He
wow.
he did not he before the mix. He died the night after he recorded.
Oh,
We were
wow.
all afraid of him. He was very irascible.
Hmm.
He quit many times. When he arrived in the States, he went straight from, he hadn't been in America in decades. He immediately headed back to the counter. He wanted to return to London. I don't know why, but he, but we were all afraid, and but he delivered. He delivered.
Well, you know what? You've got some other films I do want to touch upon. Um, I had never seen, this was something I heard of just reading up Steelyard Blues, but that was your first film, am I correct?
Yes, too bad.
Oh, not a good experience?
No, no, it was a really, really good script by David Ward, who wrote The Sting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just was a mess. It was a mess. Um, and
Because,
sometimes it's released as under a different title, The Final Crash.
uh-huh.
It, I don't know, it got us started, and I really learned a lot. Sometimes you learn more through a failure than through a success.
We had Sutherland and Fonda the same year they did Clute.
Right after Clute,
Okay.
and they were lovers, and they were traveling the country doing anti-war shows at army bases,
Mm-hmm.
and they ran out of money, their organization, and I believe that we were just lucky that Jane had an opening in her schedule, and we were able to rush it together in 2 months. And none of us had a lot of experience. It was a first time director, first time cameraman, first time art director, first time producers, first time, and the stars broke up just on the eve of the shooting. So it wasn't very good, but I was able to their enduring credit, the Warner Brothers executives scratched their heads, and they allowed us, the three producers, Tony, Bill, and Julia, and myself, to spend a year editing, experimenting. They gave us a black and white dupe of the print and a moviola, and we
Mm-hmm.
actually did the splicing and pasting, and through that year, I learned what was missing, and what we had done wrong, and we did not make it noticeably better. We made it a little bit better, but I got a real education, a real hands-on education.
And of course, it led to The Sting, which had that interesting little theme song to it. That's very um, classic theme song. I often look at Paul Newman and Robert Redford as the Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau of action movies.
There was something.
They had Robert Shaw in it too, pre-Jaws, Robert Shaw. So
It was a last minute replacement, Robert Shaw.
yeah. Any
Yeah.
memories of him?
Oh, sure. I mean, did a lot of drinking. He used to come out to our house at the beach with a car full of kids and his wife, Mary Ure,
Mm-hmm.
drink, and then insist he could drive home and wobble his way down the highway. And one time he got pulled over and he got indignant and told the cop, "Do you actually think I would drive with my 7 children in this car when I'm drunk? How dare you?" And he intimidated the cop into backing off. No, he was really good. The limp in his character was a genuine accident he got playing handball during pre-production, but it looks like a war wound, so it looks like a battle scar. So he worked out great, and the other two, I mean, they're such movie stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, looking right dead center behind you, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I mean, right after Jaws, Spielberg has Spielberg, of course, has had a remarkable career, and definitely still going. Um, he and Clint Eastwood, there's this, they're just
Yeah.
not stopping. We don't want them to either. Close Encounters, of course, Richard Dreyfuss in that, Terry Garr. You had some terrific talents in that. Talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Uh, okay, we'll go back to that house on Nicholas Beach. Steven Spielberg used to come out on weekends and visit us.
Mm-hmm.
Our career was actually a little more advanced than his because we had The Sting hadn't been released yet, but it was in post-production. And Steven had done the best TV movie ever.
Duel?
Duel,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, it was amazing. We were big fans of his. And he was working on the Sugarland Express.
Goldie Hawn, yeah.
We really met because he was doing that and we were in post on The Sting. So we were the same age. So we used to have lunch, talk about science fiction movies and everything. And then one day he said, "I want to come out to the beach and pitch you guys something." I said, "Okay." And he came and he said, "I want to make a movie about UFOs and Watergate." It has nothing to do with what the movie turned out to be. But originally it was about the government cover-up. And that's what that was the original idea. And so we went through a couple of drafts, a lot of dialogue and a couple of drafts and trying to talk about what it should be. And then he got the opportunity to do Jaws. And we thought, well, we're not ready, great, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back after Jaws, of course, all of a sudden, the spigots were open and Columbia Pictures was going to bet the farm on this one movie. But in terms of concept, yeah, I mean, we went around about what it should be about and ultimately settled on the idea that it should be the meeting of two species and it should be a good event. I mean, like The Day the Earth Stood Still was the film that blew me away as a child. And, I always thought if they're so smart, why would they come here to eat us or wipe us out? But, and Stephen, he embraced the idea, but he was always a little bit unsure whether that would be a sufficient climax. And I remember going around and around and him saying, "You sure that's going to be enough? I don't know if it's enough to just the meeting at the end." And I believe that he never quite was comfortable, so he gave us this cornucopia at the end, which goes on 15 minutes until you've got all the visual satisfaction you could ever want. I have to ask him if it's because he didn't trust the script, but anyway, it evolved into that. I said we started working with scripts, two other writers, including Paul Schrader, and because that would have been the first version. The cover-up was more of a Schrader film. What it finally isn't. But finally, he had to write it himself because the visuals were so specific in his mind, and he did. And I think. He wanted to do this since he was 13. He really wanted to make a movie like this, and I'm just glad he made it his. He made it his way, his script, and it, thank God, worked out. And
Absolutely.
good.
I don't want to give away the ending, but what did you think of that? For me, it was a little problematic, but
Which part of the ending? Him leaving?
yeah.
Well, as Steven said, he would never have shot it that way today, that he has kids of his own.
Yeah.
But we were in our 20s,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know, I guess I was older than that. We were in our early 30s, but it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the film. I'm just, I just wonder what you
I
think.
think it's valid what you're saying. It's
Yeah.
a question, and a lot of people question it, but hopefully you're so swept up in the enormity of the moment that you enjoy the film and maybe ask these questions afterward.
Richard Dreyfuss, I caught an interview that he did. He said originally they wanted Gene Hackman, and he ended up getting the role because I guess I don't know whether he spoke to Steven Spielberg or who he spoke to, saying you need somebody that's young at heart or something like that.
Well,
yeah.
Hard. Yeah, actually, it was Steve McQueen was our first.
Oh, Steve! Wow.
Yeah. And this was, but it's not the character. This is earlier on in the process.
Uh-huh.
This reads Richard Dreyfuss. You can't imagine Steve McQueen cry. In fact, he said, "I can't do a movie where I'm going to cry." That's what. So.
Did Steve McQueen have any regrets not doing the film?
I don't know. I didn't have a relationship with him.
Because you hear stories like Christopher Lee, for example, regretted turning down the Donald Pleasance role in Halloween. He said it led to a whole new career for Donald Pleasance.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, hindsight's 2020.
Richard was really, if you think of the films he made in the 70s.
Yep.
In addition to Jaws and Close Encounters and The Good
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti and Duddy Kravitz, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. I mean, he was a unique kind of presence on screen. And
still is. I've met somebody that met him at one of the Comic Cons and spoke very highly about meeting him. So I'm glad he's doing the cons. It's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about some of your smaller films, so to speak.
Losers.
Huh?
The turkeys.
I wouldn't say necessarily turkeys, but Heartbeats, Beeps, for example. I've had Alan Arkish, the director, on here. I love Alan Arkish. We talked about Rock and Roll High School and Get Crazy, and I brought this up, but working with Andy Kaufman. Anything you got on Heartbeats and Andy Kaufman?
Well, Andy Kaufman was totally nuts and had to be dealt with like not a human being. I mean, talent is beyond question, and he delivered. You knew him as a comedian, and in his role, he delivered exactly. But he had so much anxiety about him that you could feel it. Anyway, but he worked out. The sad thing to me about Heartbeeps, the saddest thing is that it got butchered in the editing at the end, and film was taken away from us. The studio recut it based on their screening research, which showed that you saw the film, the Crime Buster character got a lot of likes, so it kind of got cut around into it became a mess. Um, I take my biggest painful learning from it is that I didn't realize that the expressiveness of robots is so limited that it would drag the pace down the movie. And it looked good on the page, it looked good in the script, but in filming it, I think we just foolishly didn't realize that. And you just can't stay on them very long. And yeah. So
Okay.
hope you learned something. No, that one, but actually we did get one Academy Award nomination for special makeup for Stan Winston. So that's it. And John Williams came in as a favor to me to rescore the film in the hope we could, get it back up. But no, it's too bad. I love the writer, John Hill. I think he wrote a wonderful script, and I think we didn't design it properly.
Well, you also did Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. I'm a big Christina Applegate fan. Love Christina Applegate. So sad to hear that she has got MS. I'm actually I've interviewed a woman that's doubled for her many times, Lisa Hoyle. Actually, I was talking to Lisa Hoyle today, and asked how Christina was doing. I've never spoken to Christina, but always loved her. Married with Children, Anchorman. And of course, when I watched Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, it's because I love Christina Applegate. What are your memories of this film?
Well, first, let me just throw in some new business, which is that we are in the process. We have a script for a remake with an African-American family.
Okay.
Same story, but updated and culturally totally different. And it's wonderful. And so we're just in the process now of trying to put it together.
I don't know. Can you actually top Christina Applegate?
Can we actually what?
Can you actually top Christina Applegate? She's gorgeous. Those captivating eyes. I'm going to tell you, those eyes.
19 at the time. No, she was the anchor. She was great. And it's really a tragedy that she has MS. But the film did extremely well in its afterlife because HBO ran it forever. And there's a whole generation who can recite all the dialogue. And one of the things that really surprised me, as I say, we have a new version, which is African-American. We have an African-American writer, an African-American director. And they, from the very first meeting, knew all the dialogue in the film. And I thought that film is a really white bread suburban film, but no, somehow it reached across and everybody saw it, everybody at HBO. So anyway, it worked out really well. I was not an active producer on it. I was an executive producer. The three guys who deserve the credit are Jeff Silver and Bobby Newmeyer and oh God, blanked on Brian Riley.
You're the third person I've interviewed from the film. I've had Joanna Cassidy on here, and I've had Keith Coogan both on here. Yeah. So
he really, in my mind, it lifted the film into that cult status. It's a lot of his dialogue that people.
Oh yeah, Keith Coogan. Yep. And of course, the Flamingo Kid. You did that with Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another one of those cult films that
Yeah, it's quite popular. I'm surprised to see that it holds a dear spot in a lot of people's heart. Matt was 19 at the time. Actually, when we were casting, we also interviewed Tom Cruise, and we chose Matt Dillon over Tom Cruise, which was, in retrospect, oh, kind of we missed that one. But making a film with Gary Marshall is a great experience. You spend the entire time laughing, and it was a nice environment. We shot in Fort Tilden, New York, which is just outside of the city in Brooklyn, Queens area. And we had everything there, the production office and all the sets. It was a really lovely experience to make that movie.
Yeah. And of course,
that one took 9 years
yeah,
to get made. It was, I got it. This is how everything I get involved with is through people. Like I told you, Brian De Palma gave me the script for Taxi Driver. Cass Elliot gave me the script for The Flamingo Kid, which had a different title then, The Flamingo Kid. It was called Sweet Ginger Brown by Neil Marshall. And I tried, to set it up, and wound up bringing Gary in because we used to play basketball together. And but it was 9 years. In the movie business, never throw away your old scripts. They can come back. And there's always, you look and you talk to somebody about making a movie, it always looks like the other guy got the script, made a few calls, and was in production. It's never. It's years and frustration and yeah. But that was a happy experience for me, Flamingo Kid.
And of course, you did Mimic. That's got the lovely Mira Sorvino. Always loved Mira
Bad
Sorvino.
experience. Very bad experience. I got fired. It was, and Guillermo del Toro, I think, considers it the worst experience of his life too. He was working with at Miramax during their.
Do you want me to be frank with you?
Yeah.
I didn't like the film either.
I didn't like it.
But I do like Mira Sorvino, though, I will say.
But it's not the movie we set out to make. Okay, I brought an idea to Miramax to make a single movie, an anthology with 3 or 4 science fiction short stories in it, interwoven. Kind of inexpensive, use young directors, and let the material be the stars. So they bought into it. Bob Weinstein, not Harvey, was involved with. And we developed 3 scripts. We had Bryan Singer, Gary Fleeter, Guillermo del Toro, and Leonard Nimoy to direct 4 different short stories from Philip K. Dick, from Isaac Asimov, from, they're just from the superstars of science fiction literature. And we're humming along. We had 4 scripts, 4 directors, 4 production companies. And then I got a call from Bob Weinstein saying, sit down, you're not going to like this at first, but then you're going to love it. I said, okay, I'm sitting down. He said, these are too good to make as shorts. We want to make them all as features. And I said, you can't. Mimic is a 3-page short story. Imposter is a half-an-hour chase, You can't. But we never, anyway, they insisted, and anyway, pretty soon it became apparent that I was not cooperative and I didn't like the direction they wanted Mimic to go in. So I was gone, became executive producer, and Guillermo suffered. And Matt Robbins, he and Matt Robbins wrote the original script, which was terrific. And then they dumped them, brought in a couple of other writers who rewrote. And then the final version is just Matthew and Guillermo's script credit. So I don't know. You probably hear this from every filmmaker you talk to, but there are that was the yeah, that was a bad experience. And love Guillermo,
Hmm.
wonderful guy. You should see his new movie if you haven't already, the Nightmare Alley.
I've
Um,
been hearing about that. Yes.
yeah,
Rooney Mara in that. I like
mhm,
her. Yep.
yeah, and but anyway, but Mimic. So okay, but it spawned a sequel and Mimic Two. So I got paid, and now I hear, although I haven't been contacted, that Miramax Television is developing something on Mimic.
Okay.
Good too. You know, the film did well. It just wasn't what it was supposed to be. It became more of a monster movie than it should have been. So
Well,
you're forgiven for not liking it.
you know what it reminds me of? Another film similar to it came out the same year, The Relic. And when I interviewed John Kapelos, of course, who was the janitor in Breakfast Club, um, I had mentioned it to him. We got talking about it, and he said, "Don't worry." He said, "I hated the film." And I was like, because I never want to tell somebody their film was awful, but he trashed The Relic, and it so I try to be respectful, but I love it when somebody just comes out and says, "You know what, this didn't work out, and here's why."
Well, it's tough because all our friends are making movies and we don't always love what they do. So
Hmm. Well, looking behind you, the last Mimsy,
music,
that yeah, that was your last film. Am I
right?
correct?
Yes.
So, why did you make that your swan song?
Well, I
And
didn't know it was going to be my swan song.
oh, okay.
It was, and it took 13 years to get made.
Hmm.
So just again for the audience to know, if you're in the film business, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. Um, but it was a short story that I fell in love with,
Uh-huh.
and Bob Shea, who was the head of New Line at the time, um, he loved it too, and we went into a long, long, long process of development, which, as I said, it took 13 years. And then at the end, he announced he wanted to direct it, which was not good news to me. I thought this was, I thought the script, which was by Bruce Joel Rubin, was very special. And the idea of the movie I love. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen it?
I'm gonna be honest, I did not see the
No,
last
that's
one.
okay. You can be
Yeah.
honest, but I have to tell you, I don't recommend all my movies, but I think that one has some fabulous imagination in it.
Hmm.
And in terms of the story, it's about two kids who find a box of toys from the future.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and the toys are educational toys with a purpose. So it's really it's a storyline I haven't seen anywhere before. Um, and but you know, we went through it, and Bob got very sick, so we canceled production and come back a year later. And he did a good job, but he did do. I mean, I would have wanted to go for the top directors who could really make it soar.
Yeah.
Um, but I still am proud of it. I like it. I think it says some wonderful things. I like the performances, and didn't do as much as we'd hoped. Yeah. It also was a kind of movie that you didn't see it because what did you think it was? A kids movie? What did it seem to you out there?
You know what? I go to about one film a week at the theater, and I always look. Usually, if I don't see something, it's usually because it's been outcrowded by something else
Right.
that has
But
grabbed my
you know,
attention.
in your mind, you must have given it some kind of label or hook before you said, okay, this doesn't take first place for me. Did it look like it was a kids movie or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could never get past that. It actually is way too sophisticated for
Hmm.
children. And So I don't know. I wish we could get another run. I think the picture's good.
Yeah. Well, I'll take your word on that one. But here's a tough question. Maybe it's not a tough question. What do you think is your greatest film?
I can't. Who's your favorite child?
I don't have any kids, but I
Uh,
have a kitty, and he's over
who's your
there
favorite?
curled up
No,
asleep.
no. Obviously, the three that were the most successful are the most special to me, uh, and you know, I love them as movies, and I love what they deliver, what they say, and what they do. And then the ones that flopped, I still am really fond of. You know, the Flamingo Kid, and didn't flop. The Flamingo Kid did 25 million in the U.S. In its initial run, which converted to today's dollars would be a lot of money. Uh, in fact, the Flamingo Kid, that was his nightmare story, diverting away from film into the film business for a minute. It was produced by ABC Motion Pictures, which was a fledgling company, and they had a distribution deal with 20th Century Fox to handle their films. Um, there was a management change, and they had a commitment under that deal to spend $2 or $3 million on releasing the ABC motion picture films.
Hmm.
There was a management change, and the new head of Fox was Barry Diller. And he took a look at this deal and he said, I can't make any money on this deal. And ABC said, too bad. So what happened was that after 2 weeks, I couldn't find the movie in the newspaper. And we were the second biggest grosser after Beverly Hills Cop. And suddenly we vanished from the radar because we were the victim of a deal that was too good. It was too good for ABC. It was so good that it killed the picture.
Uh,
I don't blame Fox if they couldn't make any money on it. I blame ABC for not renegotiating. But anyway.
so what's up for the future? You mentioned something with Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, which I would be one of the executive producers.
Hmm.
We have a very good script by Chuck Hayward and a Billy Woodruff to direct. And I have a lot of, I love them. I think we're in the process of trying to get it financed and packaged. And I think, you know, it'll be, it's a good script. It'll be fun to see that again. Otherwise, I'm not really taking in new material. It's just that some of my old stuff comes back to life without my efforts. Mom and Dad Save the World is going to be developed as a TV series, as is, yeah, it's just some of the old projects that you don't always have, as a producer. Sometimes you have some rights in a remake, sometimes you don't. But those that I have, through no efforts of my own, they're back. No, I'm not actively looking for material. No.
What was it like when you and Julia Phillips won the Academy Award for The Sting? I mean, you guys made history being the first couple to do that.
It was an unreal night. It was a two-horse race that year, The Exorcist versus The Sting. And we both had 10 nominations. And, but I think The Exorcist, I don't remember what the issue was, but there was some public squabbling among the filmmakers that really turned the voters off in Hollywood. Because they ended up getting only 2 awards. We got 7. We won 7 out of our 10. But that night you could feel it in the room that it was going to happen. When, you know, we were winning all the big awards, and the director wins and the writer wins. So I knew we were going to be up. And it just was unreal. It was unreal. In a lot of ways, I wish it had happened later in my career. It was liberating in one sense. It showed me that 2 days later, you know, you're back to square one anyway as a producer. And I was trying to shop Taxi Driver.
Mm-hmm.
All they wanted was something like The Sting. You know, is Newman involved? Is Redford involved? No, no, no. This is something totally different. Um, but in a lot of ways, I wish I would have appreciated it more later on in the career. I didn't realize how incredibly how lucky you are that a movie turns out to be any good at all. Because even if the script is good and the director is good, life has all kinds of obstacles that it throws into film. But we got lucky. George Roy Hill was a mentor. He was my mentor. He's very generous in that respect. And yeah, it was unreal. It was great.
And this went on to Taxi Driver won to win the Pan
Cannes Award, yeah.
the can. Okay, all
Yeah,
right, yep.
Cannes Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And it went up there when it was announced. We knew it in advance that we had won. We found out the day before. But when I went up on stage and the audience heard, half the audience was cheering and half the audience was booing. I was sort of stunned at the rudeness, but
I would have cheered for Taxi
well,
Driver. Yeah.
well, it divided the country. You know, the critics loved it or hated it, and
Roger Ebert called it, quote, the greatest American film. And I think that's in his greatest
wow,
film.
I didn't remember that he had said that.
Yeah, Roger Ebert spoke really high of this film, and I can see why. You know, I also review movies, and I also speak very highly of this film. You know, I think.
Well, it's kind of a miracle in that Paul Schrader wrote it in only 8 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it had been boiling inside of him. He kind of knew he wanted to do it, but he just sat down with a couple of bottles of scotch and didn't sleep very much and just spewed it out. And that it didn't do a lot of rewriting on it. It just came out. It was kind of an honest expunging.
Well, you know what? I've dealt with not suicide, but I've dealt with depression in my past.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate to a lot of what Travis Bickle feels in this film. Loneliness, you know?
I think that's to me, that's what it's all about. It's all about loneliness and the
Yep.
need to even, am I even alive?
Yep.
How can I even prove to myself that I'm alive?
He's trying so badly to connect, and he's trying to rescue two different women with two different backgrounds
Right.
from the position they're in. And it's funny because he ends up he gets this date with Betsy, played by Sybil Shepherd, who's involved with this campaign and for senator. And he takes her to an adult film. Bad move, but yet the same token, he doesn't. His social outlet is so bad. This is just an everyday thing to him. And Roger Ebert did write in a review, there was a shot that Scorsese's could not show, and it's when the camera pans away when De Niro's on the payphone trying to talk to her. He says it's just too sad to see Travis Bickle get that rejection, you know?
Yeah, that was a daring move. And we all questioned, you know, what are you doing? You're showing an empty corridor, but there's so much tension.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out to be the right move, but again, he did some bold things. You know, he could reprise the dialogue sometimes. Stuff that you think, wait, something's wrong in the filmmaking here.
But even when he goes to the adult film place in the beginning of the film, he's trying to ask the cashier woman what her name was, you know, and he struggles to connect. He
Uh,
can't communicate correctly, and it ends up backfiring on him, and it's awkward for him. I get that, and
yeah.
with Jodie Foster is a little different story. It's almost like he's taken matters into his own hands, even though she didn't ask for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but that character, that moment, actually, you're talking about him buying the chuckles
Mm-hmm.
in the theater. I was flashing on. I'm a big fan of Succession, and I don't know if you watched that series on Succession. Oh, all right. Well, there's a character who is very much like that piece of Travis, who is stumbling constantly with trying to find the right words and apologizing for himself. But anyway, if you don't know the show, it's next. Move on.
But I love the fact, and again, that last moment between him and Sybil Shepherd, Betsy.
Mhm.
It's interesting too because you see her in the mirror, the rear view mirror, and it's like, what's going through her head? Is she got regrets? And I love it when Travis drops her off and she says, "How much do I owe?" And nothing. It's almost like he's done his deed, and
Yeah.
I go be frank. I think it was his way of also rejecting her, but thanks, but no thanks. How do you read that?
Well, there's a lot of thoughts coming at that. It was inspired by the Harry Chapin song,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that. But he took the money in I forgot the name of the song. You know the one I'm referring to, that the taxi guy driving a taxi and he picks up his girl. Ah, I'm blanking on it. Anyway, it's a classic song, but how do I interpret it? We had to fight to keep this in because it's not actually essential to the story. But to me,
I
I
like
love the
it.
idea that the line between a hero and a villain is an interpretation after the fact, and who's doing the interpreting. And he's a monster, but he comes out looking like a hero because the way it's reassembled. Um, yeah, I think he has no more interest. If you're asking in Betsy, no, that's a past chapter of his life. He's aware that she didn't want him in that state, but he's a different guy now too. Question is he going to wind up and do the same thing in 20 years, or you think he's released?
I'd like to hope that he's released because I mean, when you see him, even with the other cabbies, like Peter Boyle as the wizard and the other cabbies, there seems to be a little more social interaction
Yeah,
with him. And then they say somebody's in your cab, and that's when he goes over. Betsy's in there. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think he doesn't have that need for attention anymore. The need to he's not as lonely as he was during the whole movie somehow.
yeah, yeah. No, I enjoyed this film. I enjoyed watching it this morning, and um I think before I let you go, do you have any charities that you want to promote on here that you're involved with?
Uh, well, I mean, I'm for. I'd like anybody to contribute to MS. It's an
Hmm.
important charity
Yeah.
through any of the MS organizations, and to the arts in any form. In your local museums, and museums are really important to be supported, and they're
Hmm.
suffering these days. Um, but anything, good money for anything.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. And any web page or anything like that where people get a hold of you, if they like anything like that you want to promote on here?
Who are you?
Through me.
I don't,
Oh,
I don't have a web page. No, I don't have a web page, but thank you. And no, anybody who enjoys the film, I love it. I love, we do this so that people will enjoy seeing the work. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about it.
I'm gonna be frank. I feel like I'm talking to royalty here when I come on here and I knew that you did Taxi Driver and it's like The Sting and Close Encounters. I was looking through your credits. I was like, my goodness, who is this guy?
Thank you. But as I say, lucky to be around in the 70s
Yeah,
when the talent was there and the studios were confused enough to let the directors have a lot of freedom. I feel like Easy Rider opened the door, and for a wonderful decade, and it was closed. That Heaven's Gate closed it in terms of director's freedom, but in between, it was great to be a movie fan. Every week there was something interesting to see.
I agree. Yes, I agree. I was born in the 70s, the early 70s. So um, there's a lot of great stuff in the 70s. It was a great decade for movies. So yeah, yeah. Well, before I let you go, could I get you to do a plug for my show?
Sure.
Just state your name, and if you want to mention a picture or two that you're a producer on, you may, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
I just had the pleasure of talking to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise, and we talked about my film. I produced Taxi Driver, plus a couple of my other films. And he is knowledgeable and fun to talk to, and you should watch his show. Go
Thank you
there.
so much. Thank you so much,
Thank
Michael,
you.
for
Okay.
coming on here. This was an honor. Thank you so much, and I'll get this
Time
to
to
you
say
as
that.
soon as I get it ready.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. God bless and Merry Christmas to you.
Make sure I look like I'm not too bald. Can you tweak the lighting so I look like I have
I
hair?
have no idea how to do that.
Oh, I see. You had a similar problem, huh? Okay.
Well, I'm shaved.
Oh,
Got
okay.
shaved down, but you know what? That wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin made baldness look cool, so
Without trying.
we'll take it. We'll take it.
All right. Thank
God
you.
bless. God bless you. Have
You
yourself
too.
a Merry Christmas
You too.
and keep creating.
Thank you. You too.
God bless. Bye bye.